order.
All right.
All right, I will call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Cubby,
Here.
Member Paul,
Here.
Member Crow,
Here.
Member Rockwell,
Here.
Member Morse,
Here.
Member Foltz,
Here.
Member Sperlingwood, and Chair Jacobson.
Here.
All right.
Well, President accounted for. All right, then, now on to the agenda. I will entertain the motion.
Motion to adopt the agenda?
Second? Second. Any discussion? Discussion from the public on the agenda? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. On to the minutes. I would accept a motion on the minutes, maybe with a slight adjustment.
Yeah, can I make a motion that we approve the minutes with the adjustment of marking members Barry Jacobson and Teresa Sperlingwood as present instead of absent?
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Discussion from the public? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right. On to the state of the utility.
Mr. Chair, I'll share a couple of big things going on, and then Eric Walters is going to share some updates along with his three boys. Some updates on the Origis contract and where we are on the solar contract. So in terms of the utility, again, a lot of activity even since the last time we met. So where we are today, there's more things we don't know than we know. So, but I'll kind of try to bifurcate those two things. So the things we know is that a bill was filed. It was a 5-page bill that really focused on an independent board and who would be on that board and who would appoint the people on that board, which is the governor would appoint 5 people to an independent board. That has been filed. And then in addition, that has been, a committee meeting has been set up for Wednesday, the 19th, April 19th. So next Wednesday, I believe it's in the morning. I think it's a state affairs committee where they will discuss it, that bill. And then from that point, my understanding is they may choose to modify that bill based upon that committee meeting, that they could take it to other committees, but they could also just move forward from there. It would then have to go to the Senate. If it was approved from the Senate, then it would go to the governor to be signed. And so that's really what we know. I will just share a little bit, and this is kind of starts to get into the realm of what we don't completely know, is there was a version of the bill that has been made public, but it hasn't been filed. And so that version of the bill kind of contemplates a lot more information about what authorities the board would have, how it would operate, and things of that nature. We are engaged in reviewing the information and looking at it, and we have reached out to Representative Clemens' office to have discussions about there are things that we can do, and we've provided information. But at this point, the official bill is still the one that was just filed, which is the 5-page version. And is it attached for everybody? Okay, yeah. That's in my packet. I didn't know. So it's in your packet, that 5-page version of the bill. The session ends May 5th. So, after the 19th, there's only a couple more weeks, and then that's the end of the legislative session. And again, it's anticipated to go to the Senate prior to the end of the legislative session.
Look, if I could just interrupt you real quick, and I've seen this, just to be clear for everybody, this is the same as the original version, which was just, here's the definition of the UAB, just cross out city commission, fill in governor, change a couple dates, and you're done. So to this other bill,
the alternative, the other language that is out, and again, I want to be really, really careful because nothing's been filed.
Right.
It is simply information that frankly was in the media. It was on TV20's website that had like more detail, but it does contemplate a lot more of the details of what the board's authority would be and things of that nature. And so it has in there that the independent board would basically have essentially all the responsibilities and authority that the current commission has. Everything would sort of be transferred to that board, and they would be the independent authority over the utility. There are things in there that are unknown, like how they would work. You know, everything is not clearly laid out, and so there's a lot of questions that come up that we just don't know the answers to.
Do we have any idea the source of this alternative bill? So it could just be something we have no idea, basically.
Yeah, so all I know concerning that is that it was on that, it was on the website and, had that information.
Okay. Now, the meeting that you mentioned, is there room for public comment at that meeting?
There is. So it's a committee meeting, and there is opportunity. I don't know exactly what the rules and protocol are, but we'll most likely have city representation there, commenting or doing something at that time.
Okay.
That's it. And I have a few other items that aren't related to that.
Well, before we move on, does anyone know? I know we're dealing with a lot of stuff we don't know, and we thought we would know more by now. Anyone have any questions, comments?
I, for one, would like to see it, that 14-page.
Other draft, I went onto their website for that TV station, I couldn't find it there. Maybe it was there, but I couldn't find it. Could we have that sent to the board members?
But yeah, we can provide that. I just want to be really clear. I have no idea if that has any bearing on all of this. It appears to, but it's not anything official and it hasn't been filed and things of that nature. But yes, we can share that.
A lot of the questions raised in the letter that Barry
That drafted and sent out are what you might call ones of management and detail down in the weeds, which may be addressed by this other draft.
Yes, I think it contemplates quite a few things that, again, setting of rates and approving of budgets and things of that nature are contemplated in there.
Representative Clemens hasn't even taken ownership of that? Hasn't even said like, yes, that's mine?
Not that I'm aware of.
That's not what he filed,
It's not what officially was filed.
or it said that he wrote it.
Did I miss the news story? Did they say where they got it from?
No.
No.
You just parachute down? Well, at Easter, you gotta check your eggs in the backyard.
I mean, there are people out there in the community, Wes Wheeler, former chair of the UAB, for one, who wrote suggestions. And so this could just be someone's writings. So I wouldn't get too excited about it.
I don't know, and I think that's what's a little bit hard about this process. Again, there's more questions that I don't know the answer to than we do.
And I'm really, I've said this before, sorry for all of us, but especially for our GRU family who's suffering through this. I really hope that even if we're bad news, we'd have news. This is like kind of almost a worst case scenario of so many unanswered questions. That's a hard way to lead or to run a utility. So we'll do.
Yeah, so I will say, I mean, we will get a lot of answers in the next couple of weeks. The session ends on the 5th, so we'll know by then what bill has passed or hasn't passed, and we'll know the outcome. And so it is still several more weeks, but I think in several more weeks we'll have answers to a lot of the questions.
Can I? Yeah, I mean, I'm just still trying to understand, like, the legality in terms of public noticing of bills that are going to be passed before 90% of people in this community even know what's in it. Like, I don't even understand how can we even engage in this process and have a conversation about something that we don't even know what's in it. I mean, I would love somebody, and I don't understand the legislature and how it works, and what the laws are around this kind of thing, but it's insane to me. I'm struggling to even know how to approach it. I mean, and I wanted to thank Barry I thought he wrote a really great letter, and one of the things I wanted to ask tonight was whether you had heard from any of the members of the delegation.
I got no response.
And I also, as I think I mentioned, I made calls to all of them, talked to staffers in the office, said, hey, I'm on a board that relates to GRU. You might want to come and have a conversation with us, just to, and again, I haven't had a return phone call either. And so it's just wild to me. This whole process is wild to me. And I don't understand how it's legal. That's it.
Yeah, I offered each senator representative, I'll come to you, we can talk on the phone, whatever you want, but it's been crickets. It has not felt like a collaborative experience at this point. So and with dire consequences. I mean, I don't want to dramatize it, but it's pretty scary stuff. So.
Well, and I guess I'll just ask also, I keep thinking about this and you folks are in touch with them more than I am. Where is the FMEA on all this? Or have they weighed in?
So the FMEA has been weighing in on some other bills that are affecting all utilities. They provided some information that helps us frame, sort of the benefits of local and public power and things of that nature. And the general counsel for FMEA and FMPA, we've had conversations and kind of consulting on, but they haven't done anything else directly because this is a local bill. So this is a bill that only applies to Gainesville. So their focus has been a lot more on the other broader bills that affect all municipal utility and public power across the state. But they have just provided basic consulting and input for us through the process. And again, there's a lot of unknowns. So we are reaching out. We have talked with the delegation. Eric and I actually met with each of the local delegates except for one, and trying to give our input and benefits of having the utility the way it is and all of that. So we've had some opportunity to do that. We just don't really know where it's headed.
Well, thank you for doing that. Glad somebody is.
Yes, please.
I've got a question about the agenda. I have a bunch of questions about this subject, but is what we're talking about now going to end the discussion of that subject? Or are we going to come back to it later in terms of Barry's letter and that type of thing?
So I'm giving an update on the state of the utility. I think you all will have further discussion when you're talking about the letter.
So we can come back to
Yeah,
it.
we can come back to it and have a more general discussion. All right.
So there's two more things I want to touch on. One is, and if I mess up, I'm doing by memory, Mr. Hudson, correct? Is that right, Mr. Hudson? Is that your last name? Okay. I just wanted to let you all know Mr. Hudson had applied to be on the Utility Advisory Board. The commission did not approve him being on the board. They want to re-advertise. I think the primary reason was, again, I'm doing this from memory because the minutes aren't out yet. The primary reason was that he's not officially a resident yet. He's moving here. And so they wanted to make sure that they had a resident and a customer to be on the Utility Advisory Board. And so they voted to re-advertise the position. And I'm not sure if Mr. Hudson still is going to be interested in applying, and he'll probably have residency. I think you're planning on having it within the week or something. But I wanted to kind of give you an update on that in terms of that seat being filled. And then the last item really has to do with the Origis contract, the solar contract. And so I was going to see if Mr. Walters wanted to come up and kind of give an update on where that is and where we are and where we're.
Thank you, Tony. Chair, members, Eric Walters, Chief Sustainability Officer, GRU. The last time we came before this board, we were going to the City Commission and for approval of the Origis contract. That contract was approved. And then I think February 16th, and then the next week, JLAC happened, the JLAC hearing came. And the commission wanted us to bring the Origis contract back. So when we did that, we made the recommendation the same as the first to go forward with the contract, but with the caveat that we would go back to JLAC, to our local delegation, give them more details on the contract, and then bring that feedback back to the City Commission on the 20th. And so next week is the 20th. So we will be going back before the city commission to do that. Effectively, what we've done is as Tony mentioned, we went to a few trips to Tallahassee, more than I wanted to take, but we met with 8 of the 11 JLAC members, and we met with 4 of the 5 local delegation. We gave them a brief history of the contract. We gave them a high-level summary of the terms and conditions. We gave them background information as to a comparison of the GREC PPA and the Origis PPA to really show the differences. And then we also kind of went through an explanation of, okay, why solar, why now? Does it make sense to do it now, and why it still does? And a little bit of the financial analysis from that. So after those conversations, we got some good questions, good feedback. Generally, there was no thumbs up, thumbs down. You can or can't do that. I mean, they gave neutral to feedback to the contract. There were no red flags. There were no, hey, you shouldn't do this for these reasons. It was just really, really open. A lot of the comments surrounded redactions and how could we pass a contract that was redacted and so forth. So there was a lot of conversation about that. So effectively, the next steps are what we're going to do is go back on the 20th. We're in contact with Origis and telling them about the concerns that they have about redactions and so forth. And so they are contemplating giving a response to that. And then we will present that response to them, to the city commission. One of the things that was interesting, though, is that the legislative, not judicial, but the legal consultant basically said, yeah, all the redactions are within the law. They don't violate any constitutional things. It's all legal. It was all done above board, and it makes sense and in compliance with the law. So we'll bring that information back to them. We'll make the same recommendation that they go forward with the contract, that they go ahead and give the general manager the authority to execute that. So I wanted to come back, or we wanted to come back and give an update of where we were, the conversations that we've had, and then the next steps that we expect to do with the commission.
Thank you.
With that, any questions?
Questions? So I have a question, and Tony and I talked about this, but I think it'd be useful. So let's say the city commission comes back and says, no, there is a contract in place. What would happen at that point?
So we've contemplated that a little bit. Effectively, because they have a signed contract, we would officially go back to Origis and say, we won't approve the amendment. You have a signed contract, and go execute on that contract. Effectively, we believe what would happen at that point is they would say, well, we cannot execute because we cannot get financing at that previous pricing. And so at that point, the contract would basically go away, it would become null and void. So that's one of the caveats, that if they can't finance at that price, then it basically allows both sides to separate. Now, there may be a few other things in there, but we'll let the lawyers figure that stuff out. But effectively, it's over.
Okay. And if they come back and say, oh, we've decided to unredact, but at that point, you won't be coming back to us for timing, I assume. You would just go straight to the city commission with that information? Okay.
So that's what they are contemplating now.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So at this point, this is just informational, nothing for us to act on at that point.
No vote, no official recommendation, no.
Okay. All right.
So, Mr. Chair, I would say also, we're still under nothing has changed from what you all have contemplated and all of that. And so we're still just under the same recommendation we've had all along, which is to continue and to execute the contract. And that's what we're anticipating taking back to the city commission.
Okay. And for the board, unless anyone has feelings, our position should be changing. We don't need to do anything. But if someone has strong feelings they'd like to voice, I wanted to give people a chance. It's a weird time right now. To say it's gonna.
I got strong feelings.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I believe Walter kids are going to go to the game.
Oh, nice.
Have fun. I did have just a question on the state of the utility, if that's all right.
Sure.
I know we just recently had this rollout of the new customer service stuff, and I don't usually have GRU customer service interactions because I've had this account for a long time and I pay it and that's how it is, but I did need to make a change. And I know Kenzon's not here tonight, but I did need to make a change in my account this week, and I called yesterday and was on hold for almost an hour before I gave up, and called today and was on hold for right at an hour and got through finally. And so I'm assuming that it's still sort of turbulent with the changeover to this new system. I wondered if you might have anything to
Sure.
update us about.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, so I wouldn't characterize it as turbulent, but I would say anytime you make a change into a new system, it's different. And so we have made the transition. There haven't been any significant impacts, but we have found minor defects, and we're working on what those minor defects are. That has also ramped up the wait times a little bit. One of the things, we're probably getting away from it now, but one of the things is we had closed the lobby for 2 days, and then the first of the month started. First of the month is always a busy time, and we had the lobby closed for a couple of days, and so we had the lobby and the drive-through and kind of anybody interacting, and so we've kind of have a backlog that we're catching up on. What we anticipate and what the consultant that we worked with kind of described as things will kind of seem a little bit more challenging, and then eventually get back to where they were, and then eventually get better over time. And so I think we're still on that curve where we have longer wait times and things of that nature, but we're anticipating as our customer service reps are in the system more and get more efficient, that will kind of start reducing all of those. But they're still still doing that. So what happened was in the lead up to it, the 2 days we were closed, especially, we did a significant amount of training of our personnel on the system, and then they worked all weekend getting everything ready for the cutover. And then on Monday, they're in there, and I will just, this is totally anecdotal, but just catching someone in the parking lot, as a customer service rep for a long time, he said, "Man, I can't quite find everything, like it's in different places than it used to be." He goes, "But I'm figuring it out." And it was kind of a description of what happens in a new system. I mean, imagine you get new software and you're kind of doing that. So long way to say, at a big level, all the big rocks about the transition have gone really well. Some of the smaller rocks of precisely how it operates, I think, are being figured out now, and we're hoping that kind of we hit more of a steady state in the next couple of months. But we haven't had any major sort of challenges and all, which is a really, really good thing in a transition, particularly in a billing system.
Given the new system, and this training up time you have, what is anticipated, 60 to 90 days from now?
Yes.
Is there a target for?
That's a great question. I don't know if I know precisely, but my impression, I think, from Kenzan was more like the 60 to 90 days, you get more to that back to normal, and then after that you start to see the improvement of having the new system. But I hold that loosely because I'm not.
Well, like the target I was looking for is the time to answer.
Oh, right.
Yep. Since we got a new system, it's going to be more efficient like that. What is the target beyond 60 days?
Got it. Got it. So I don't know off the top of my head, but I think our goal for answering calls is somewhere in the 5 to 10 minute range. Not the 60-minute range. Is the time to answer, and then the time on the call is like a 3 to 5 minute goal. So I think that's the goal. I don't know precisely when we're trying to get to reach that goal. That's something I can bring back a little bit of what that looks like. I think
that's a typical queuing problem. I mean, if you know the traffic coming in, the length of time and on the average, you can pretty well tell what your wait time is going to be, given and how many how many servers you have to have online at any one time.
Correct.
I mean,
Yep.
that's a math problem.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the challenge with it is it's very peaky, right? So it's peaky seasonally during August when you have move in and move outs. It's very peaky during first of the month. A lot of things are happening there, and so that's a resourcing staffing challenge.
That's exactly why you use the model, because the first of the month, you have more people on their way.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
The holding time is the biggest variable.
Yep. Yep.
It's not the number of people, the number of calls coming in, it's the holding time.
Yep.
Well, and when we've gotten some of the reports in the past that you all would provide,
Right.
they would have some of those statistics in them.
Yep.
And so it would be interesting to see kind of like what that's looked like, because it's been a minute since we've seen those. I
Yep.
feel like it'd be interesting to see like what that has looked like and then, you know,
Okay.
what the targets are and where it's headed.
Yeah, we can definitely bring that at a future meeting.
And there are techniques, what do you call it, like I say, they go through these queuing models and you say, all right, how do I improve that? Generally, it's putting more people on there so you can answer the phone, okay? And the second part, like I said, the most important thing is reducing length of the call. 1 minute on 5 minute is a huge difference.
Yep.
And it'll make all those statistics look radically different. And I've done this in the past and I've watched it, and it's amazing. It's predictable.
So we'll plan on providing some of that updated data that we have before on those parameters.
All right, thank you. Moving on to a request for approval to execute a contract for cost of service and utility rate studies with Baker Tilly US LLP.
So, Mr. Chair, Karen Fiore will provide a brief presentation and answer any questions.
Hello, Karen Fiore, Rates Manager. Yes, we're here to talk about the bid award for external cost of service and utility rate study. So every year, our internal rates group provides an internal cost of service study. So there we utilize our most recent audited financial statements and we look at all our revenues and expenditures and compare them to our current rate structure. The analysis then provides us, are we over collecting per class, are we under collecting, or perhaps even in an entire system. We then take that information and provide it to our leadership where they use that information to help guide them through the upcoming budget process. So this is done internally annually around the March-April timeframe. Good industry practice is to commission for an external cost of service study. We want to see how accurate our current rate structures are with industry standards. We also want to see how equitable between each of our classes we are, as well as our rate stability and our conservation efforts. Our rating agencies also request this information from us. They want to see that our rate structure is able to provide the adequate cash flows for future capital, debt, our transfers, our actual maintenance, and our reserves for each of our systems. And we also use the data internally to compare to our internal cost of service study to make sure that internally, when we do that study every year, that we're keeping up with any industry changes. The last external study was done in 2018 by Wilden. So a few months ago, we went out for an RFP for an external cost of service study, and the scope for that study included the use of the fiscal year 22 audited financial statements. They would allocate cost among customer classes for each system, identify the proportion of costs associated with usage charges for each system, and ultimately providing us appropriate rate structure that we possibly may implement for the fiscal year 2025 budget cycle. So the RFP resulted in 6 responses, 1 bid and 5 no bids. Baker Tilly US LLP was the sole bidder. And so our evaluation committee, which consisted of 5 members, we evaluated that 1 bid and we scored it. And on average, it was 88.6 out of 100 points. And it was determined that Baker Tilly qualified and had high scoring, and they were the ones that we chose.
Hold on one second.
Do you,
Yep.
do you
Question.
want us to hold questions, or? I have one specific to this
Sure.
part. When I saw that, I was kind of taken aback, that like by the whole 5 no bids situation. So I'm just wondering, I don't know, to the extent that you have like explanation for that, but that just struck me as strange.
For example, Wilden was not able to provide a bid. They contacted us, and the reason for that is they no longer have a professional utility employee on board that would be able to perform this analysis. The other ones I'm not 100% sure on. I do know that our procurement office reached out to a few of them, but I don't have the answers on that. Baker Tilly was also our provider for our 2012 and 2015 cost of service study, and they're also currently our external auditors, and they informed us that there would not be any conflict of interest to perform the cost of service and continue to do our external audit. The timeline that they provided is basically 4 months where they'll be working their field work and collecting data. This is where they're going to dissect all our financials and ultimately provide us with that appropriate recommendation for our rate structure. We'll then take that information to our leadership team in a presentation format, and then it will come to UAB and the City Commission in early January and February. So the recommendation today is that the Utility Advisory Board should recommend the City Commission authorize the general manager or his designee to negotiate and execute a contract with Baker Tilly US LLP and approve the issuance of a purchase order in the amount of $141,400. This is currently in the adopted 23 budget within the rates group. And that's all I have.
Mr. Chair, can I add just, so I'm going to ask Karen a question.
Okay.
Karen doesn't know I'm about to ask her a question. So there were 5 no bids. There was 1 bid, but that bidder was entering a competitive process. So they don't know that they're the only bidder. So I just want to make that clear. Like, so they're entering a competitive process. Secondly, and this is the question, is the price that they put out there, is that consistent with previous years and and what we were anticipating, or is it an outlier? You know, how did it come in relative to what we were thinking pricing would come in?
Yeah, I believe our full budget is around $150,000, so we knew there was going to be an increase over our last study. Our last study came in right at $99,380, so we knew there was going to be an increase from there. So it was in line with what we were thinking. We did also put in the RFP that there's possibly some portions that we may not actually want them to analyze for us. For example, the cost of service on the water for UF. We have a contract with UF, so we may not want to spend the money to have them analyze that when we know we're probably not going to use that. But that's in there as a caveat where we can make a decision to either do that or not do that. And that full price, though, is in the 141.
So just a couple clarifying questions. So if I understand what you said, you were anticipating a 50% increase basically from last year's study?
I believe it was just an inflation.
There's 5, that last study was done in 2018, 2019. This wasn't done last year. So we're talking about almost a 5-year interval between the last studies. We do internal studies each year.
Got it.
We want to do external studies every 3 years.
But 50% seems like a pretty good jump.
It didn't surprise us given the time lag. That was pretty much what we were anticipating. That's why we budgeted $150,000.
I did look at, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I did look at prior, when we did 2018 and some of the other bids, and Wilden came in at the lowest at that time. There were other ones that were way over 100,000 during 2018 study.
Also, you're saying this is pretty standard practice, so do most utilities, every 5 years or so, we have a study done?
Yeah, it's industry recommendation. Again, when you have your rated agencies looking for that information and knowing that other utilities put that information out, you're going to want to be transparent with all of your data.
Is it just, to Jason's point, strikes me as odd. It seems like there are thousands of them being done every year, that we can only find one company that would be responsive to bid on something that seems like a pretty good moneymaker for people. So I'm not saying we shouldn't recommend this at this point, but it just does strike us as odd.
I could provide the manager with the responses that the procurement office received from the other ones that did not put in a bid, so you would have that information.
Okay, yeah, I think I'd be interested to see that. Anyone else? Tim, you have some?
Yeah, so, when you're reading through their proposal or whatever you want to call it, and their various cost of service, cost allocation philosophies, and talking about gathering all this data about demands and discharge and flows and stuff, I assume that's all data you guys have and will provide to them. They're not going to do their own data collection.
That's correct. They'll work with each of the departments to retrieve all that information.
And you guys don't have anybody, well, I mean, you guys have people in-house doing sort of internal studies, but this is just sort of getting an outside opinion every so often.
That's correct.
Right.
Anyone else? Fletcher?
I've got a very simple question. What kind of data is collected for a specific customer? I mean, like, let's say it could be a hospital, I don't know what, school system or something. What are you looking at? I mean, is it like maintenance costs, or is it depreciation costs, or customer service costs? What goes into that data collection?
So we look at all of the revenues by class within each of the systems and all the expenditures, including all your capital for each of the systems. And they're looking at usage by customer, what our current rates are. They recommend what potentially a better rate might be for each of those classes and systems. So they're, on the water system, how much we're using, how much we're distributing in our wastewater, or collecting, I should say, in our wastewater. Any other things I should add?
No, I was going to say that your answer was correct. It looks at all the costs associated with providing service to customers by class as well as all the revenue. There's no parsing out by hospital or whatever. It's all cost of revenue. That's the tax. They want to match up and see if the revenue we're collecting matches with the cost of providing service that particular class, so that they can tell if there are any mismatches.
And what happened the last time? Did you come out real close, or were there some discrepancies bouncing around?
Compared to our internal cost of service study, it was comparable. It's not going to be completely, perfect, but it did show the same trends.
So it was pretty
Residential.
close last time.
It was, yes.
And you expect it to be close this time?
We do, yes. And that's a good sign. If we're not close, then is our internal cost of service study, the calculations, are those correct? Or is Baker Tilly adding something in there, a layer that we're not? And we have an opportunity to work with them and say, we think we should do it this way, and the reason why. Perhaps maybe we're not as close to other utilities. Maybe we have something special happening here at GRU compared to others.
Sure, go.
So you were talking earlier about things that might be left out of the process, like the UF water situation. We're at this interesting point right now where AMI is being deployed, which opens up a new world of possibilities in terms of billing. So I'm thinking specifically about like time of use rates and that sort of thing. I would think, I don't know, I would think that a rate study like this would be a good opportunity to start looking at that and thinking about that. And so I'm wondering if that is the case with this, because when I looked at the addendum that was provided, addendum number 1, somebody, I guess it was Baker Tilly, specifically asked, is time of use data available for each customer class? And the answer was no. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, how does that process actually happen? Of like, okay, we want to be thinking maybe about time of use rates, but we don't have time of use data. Like, yeah, just help me understand that if you would, like how that plays out in terms of a.
I'll try to answer it, but then Mark, I'm sure, will help me here. But the studies are done based on your current financials, and we do not necessarily have that data yet. Moving forward, when we do have that in place, our next study would be able to encompass that time.
So we'd be looking at a serious look at the potential of time of use rates 3 to 5 years from now, once AMI is deployed and we start to have that data in
Once it's
hand.
in place and we've got some data for them to review, that's when the hard.
Gotcha, thank you.
And I'll just add a very little bit to that. So we'll probably have about a quarter of the meters in and operational by later this year. And actually, we do already have parts of our system that we are no longer reading the meters manually, but collecting the data directly. But by August, September, October timeframe, we should have about a quarter of the meters, and then have probably 90% of the meters within the next two and a half years. At that point, we'll be collecting data to be able to start looking at time of use rates. And the plan is that we have a list of things called phase 2 things that are after the deployment and after everything is started. Then we're contemplating the phase 2. Time of use rates would be part of that phase 2. The other part is part of the integrated resource plan is to be looking at demand side management, potentially time of use rates as part of that, as one of the things to look at for future generation. So you kind of have multiple things sort of converging at the same time, so that probably a couple years down the road, that would be the time to really be recommending that. And then I think the next cost service study would then contemplate that as part of it. So I think that reinforces everything that Karen and Mark just said.
Thank you.
Hey. Go ahead, Teresa.
That would be the electric meters first and then down to water and gas, or how would that work? Because with the AMI, you're only doing electric?
So, Mr. Chair, no, we're doing them all. Actually, I think water's ahead right now in terms of meters in. I believe there's 28,000 meters deployed, and that's a combination of water, electric, and gas. So that all of those meters are sort of going in. There's different people deploying the different types, but they're all going in right now at the same time.
But water wouldn't have typically a time of use.
Oh, correct. From a time of use, that would be electric. Yes, ma'am.
And gas either.
I don't think so.
Anyone else? At this point, I would entertain a motion.
Also move?
To accept staff's recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, do we, any discussion from the board? Any discussion with the public on this motion? Yes, Mr. Shepherd. On this motion.
On this motion, I feel that it shouldn't be passed because we don't have the information. Why put the horse before the cart? If you don't have the information from these meters or from the bioutility people, why are you going to make a decision on something that you don't have all the information on? As a customer's, as a people's representative, I say that we hold off on this until we get that information, then bring it back. I got other comments, but this was just about this. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd.
And my name is Donald Shepard, for the record.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. All right, I guess we'll go ahead and call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. So on to our next item, which is the election of UAB officers. So we need to elect a new chair and vice chair. I don't make motions, as I said last time. I'd be willing to continue. About times the chair does 2 years. I think with all likelihood, this will not be a full full year period. I don't see it happening. But if someone's lifelong dream is to be the chair of the UAB, I'm not going to fight anyone either. So at this point, I will take. So this is where my Robert's rules. So do people make motions and then they're voted up and down, or do we have a slip?
You can make a nomination from the floor or, from the dais. Someone can make a nomination, and then if the person who's being nominated accepts, then you would vote on that.
And then you would do it, if it's not voted favorably, then you would go to the next nomination?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So at this point, would anyone like to make a nomination? Yes, John.
Mr. Chair, I would nominate the existing chair. He's done a nice job and he's well-trained.
Broken in.
Broken in.
House broken.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I guess I won't oppose it, but okay. Thank you for your support. Sometimes I wonder how I'm doing. But now we need a nomination for a vice chair. Our current vice chair is Jason.
And I just say, I personally, I think this kind of thing should be rotated. And so if anybody here would be interested and available in doing that, I'd be happy to pass the baton on this.
No takers.
Think about it for a minute.
I nominate we keep the package deal for now.
Do we have a second on that nomination?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
It was a quiet nay. We'll call it unanimous just for fun. All right, thank you.
I just want to speak to the nomination.
I think Barry did an outstanding job with that letter, and I think we all owe him a real debt of gratitude.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I shared a little bit with some of the guys. It was a weird week last week. I ended up in the hospital with sepsis. And as I'm there, one of the things I'm contemplating is I have to write the letter. I can't go back and have someone else write it because we can't re-vote. And so, not my biggest concern at the moment, but it was a weird time. As the many weird times are happening these days. So I appreciate that. So speaking of letters, we had anticipated at this time having a very different.
I'm sorry, was there supposed to be public comment on the voting for, because I just saw Mr. Shepherd raise his hand, so I wasn't sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want public comment on the voting of the officers?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize.
I feel that we do need new officers, and the example has been set here tonight. If you're not get the information from them and then make the decision, then you're defeating your reason for being up here as our utility advisory boards. And this is something that I was very angered about. I'm saying it nicely, angered about when Mary Alford was on the board, because things got passed that should not have been passed then. Let's not repeat history. And this is what's been going on, is repeating history. This here utility advisory insurance company, how long they been in service? I ain't hearing any of you saying anything about that. Also, I know for a fact, because I got the records at home, because I've been coming to these meetings for 14 years, and I have that information at home that proves the default of the advisory board when we did biomass and also the copper funds. So we need somebody who is going to have a level head on his shoulder. Like this gentleman here, being turned down is like spitting in the public's face. This man's qualities has been brought to this board, and we all should be thanking this man for taking that opportunity to bring himself to Gainesville. This here will be a quality individual who will be on the board, and we can have quality statements being reviewed that needs to be in the behalf of the people. I don't see where this here is in behalf of the people without this information being here. And as a people's representative, I feel that there's many people out there that are scratching every dollar they can to pay their utility bills. How many, nobody brought a list of how many people who have had their utilities shut off in the years prior and now, we ain't never seen anything like that. I'd like to see something like that brought to the advisory board or to the city commission so that we can move forward in equality instead of the way we are. And I'm not a person for this equality board or equity board. I'm not a person for that because all people are equal. And that there is another expense that's been put on the city and has been just laughed at by the public, because why over the city, they're saying, why is the city putting a board like this together that is no use to the citizens? This here is just a board that is only governed for equity and equality. We got Johnson off the board as a commissioner because of this stupidity. And we can take and do the same with other commissioners. And I too have been up to Tallahassee several times in behalf of all this information. And I had given them information, copies of all this stuff, and asked them to please, our governor and senators, 4 senators and the governor, to please look into Gainesville's billing, look into Gainesville's transfers, look into everything that Gainesville's doing now, because they're not doing it in the behalf of the people. Beautification board, where's that? Okay, that was something that needed. Our historical board, where is that? I'm not hearing anything about that. These are the things that need to be brought back. These, if we have a quality mayor and commissioners, these are the things that need to be instituted to our city instead of the nonsense that's going on, passing something that doesn't even have the information to take them back up the information in your agenda. This is my heart feeling. When you see elderly people, 98 years old, over by the Walmart on Wilson Road, Waldo Road, they had died over it because she couldn't understand where is she going to get the money. She lives on a fixed income. I live on a fixed income. But for this woman to have to take her own life because of the stupidity of these bills, no. And we got to start marching forward in the behalf of the people, not what this commissioner or that commissioner, this board or that board recollects. If you ever been to some of those boards, they got young people on those boards that don't know the history of Gainesville, don't know what do we do next. They have to be told by the leader of that board, the chairperson. And where is the proper
Mr.
sequence?
Shepherd, I'm sorry, I forgot to start your clock, but I believe your time is.
Oh, it's been way over, ma'am.
Okay.
So,
If you want to just.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd, for your comments. I do
let's
appreciate
do
your
something
passion.
for the people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am,
Thank
that you
you.
got
Thank you,
bored
Robert.
listening to me.
And I just want to be clear for Mr. Hudson, this was not a question of his qualifications, or this was a question of residency status, and he's been invited to, and I hope apply to the board. So no disparagement on him. Thank you. All right, so let's move on to the letter. As I started to say, we thought we'd be writing a letter based on a very different, updated version. What do we want to do? We're kind of sitting in the same position we were a couple weeks ago.
I think everything was said in that letter that we could possibly say in a very mild manner. I'm very pleased with the approach the letter was taken, and hopefully we didn't tick off a few many people in Tallahassee, but
I tried to stick to the facts.
yes.
Those are just the facts.
And I don't know what else we could say, but if there is, maybe I'm missing something.
What do you guys think? Anything else we can say, Jason?
Well, I mean, so we've read the letter, we've made phone calls. To me, it's absolutely shameful that there has not been a meeting in this community on this topic. And the only thing that I think that the legislative delegation is going to respond to is a public meeting in this community on this topic. So it's not within our power to do this, but my fervent wish and desire is that the city of Gainesville and GRU would hold a public hearing on this topic, on the future of governance of GRU in this community, and invite the legislative delegation to come and speak. I mean, certainly they would be welcome to come, but also invite people from GRU, from our city commission, from civic organizations in this community, and just citizens like Mr. Shepherd that want to talk about their opinions. Because if you only are seeing what's in the papers, it's, Clemens, in my opinion, is being very combative. Every quote I've read from him in the papers has been pretty nasty, in my opinion. And that's the only thing I have to go on because, of course, our phone calls are not getting returned. And then on the other hand, you have, the city commission, which says, hey, we're trying to make these steps, we're trying to make these changes, but a lot of that is happening, you know, behind closed doors, or at least at meetings where the public is not at, or in Tallahassee, again, meetings with the legislators. And then you have a hell of a lot of customers in this community who have concerns about the utility and the future of the utility, but also are just not being involved in the conversation at all. And I just would like to see some sort of middle way where we could model what a collaborative community conversation on the future of GRU governance looks like. And if our legislative delegation or their staff or whoever chooses to participate, then great. And if they don't, then, well, then the people in this community will see publicly in a big way how concerned they are and interested they are in public input. So to me, that's what I would like to ask the city and GRU, is to have a public meeting on this topic, obviously pretty quickly, because we don't have a lot of time. But I think that there's enough interest in the community that you would get a significant turnout, and it would be a very interesting conversation. And I think that would go way further than us sitting up here for another 45 minutes trying to come to some agreement on verbiage for a letter that apparently isn't going to get read and responded to anyway. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. And honestly, you know, I tend not to be negative, but honestly feels like they have no interest in our opinions. And I mean, in talking with people in the community, I feel like one of the best things we could do is, if you know conservative business people, that's someone who this legislative delegation may respond to. Is, you know, I'm not sure how and I'm not sure that people really understand in the community. I sent the letter to the newspaper. I didn't get any response there either, unfortunately. To, you know, just what the impacts of this could be. I mean, I think some people really have no idea you know, how strong the impacts. Oh, they have this, we'll just sell the utility and then our rates will go down and everything will be, you know, even if you're not living in Gainesville, people will be impacted by this. You know, the county will be impacted, so I'm not sure how we get the word out in a very short period of time. If Fletcher.
Well, I just want to say that I've known Mr. Foltz for a number of years now, and I've always had a tremendous admiration for him, but it's never been more than tonight. I just really thought he had reached a really new level of eloquence and rationality. I would like to make one slight suggestion, though. It sounded like in your comments you thought GRU should host this get-together. I think maybe it might be better to have a neutral group, the League of Women Voters perhaps, be the invitees, the inviting group. And also, in addition to that, in the University of Florida College of Business, there's a utility consulting group that has a lot of, I would say, sway in the industry, and would be neutral and would be probably seen as a powerful group that would have some prominence. I'd like to see, like you say, this done pretty rapidly, but we could make sure we send the invitations to some of the key groups that are real stakeholders in this process. And I think it would be very beneficial if indeed the representatives of the elected officials don't show up. I think that really is strong indication of being railroaded. And nobody likes to be railroaded. And at this point, I sort of feel quasi-railroaded right now. I was prepared to talk about the bulleted items in the letter, which I thought were well constructed, but it seems like the long version of that mythical bill, 14-page bill, may address these points. So what we really need to do, I think, is find that other bill and see if it covers these bulleted items, and then ask the question, would there be a substitute bill that would be slipped in at some legislative session, which is known to happen? And also we need to ask, what's happening on the Senate side? All the action seems to be on the House side, And I'm just wondering if there's a companion bill or if there is any plans for hearings or a bill that's somewhat different than the House bill.
Can anyone address that question?
So there's not a companion bill at this time on the Senate side, but I think it's anticipated there will be toward the end of the session, but I don't really know. And they are not required to have any committee meetings if there is one. So that's what I know.
Tim, you had something?
Well, so my question was going to be about the process. Since there's already a bill filed, how does that work? Do they have to? Can they just retract that bill and file a new one on the day of the vote? Maybe I don't. Legal expertise could chime in with that. I'm just wondering what
Chair, members, a bill can be amended at any time. And the representative who put forth the bill can issue a strike-through for the current bill and put in a new one. And that would usually take place, or it could take place at any of the committee meetings that they have. So we wouldn't know when a new bill would come in, and there could potentially be no new bill.
All right, thank you. And that's what, my take, from, and I don't have any inside knowledge of the city commission, is they're trying let's suggest things, let's see what we get in there, that the adversarial approach is probably not gonna get too far. But we're also finding the conciliatory approach is not getting too far either. This was a real, I was shocked to see this come back with nothing. Because this is like, I didn't even contemplate a scenario this bad where all of us, and I don't know if anyone can, so if, let's say this bill passes, what happens? I mean, who, if this new group comes up and says, okay, we want to issue bonds or whatever, who answers those questions?
So Bianca, I'm sorry if you could come back up. The question was if the filed bill passes, what happens?
So you don't have any real definition of the powers of this board and.
Right, that is a big concern. The current bill is only 5 pages. It doesn't have much detail. What we would need is the representative who put forth the bill to explain what all goes into it, right? So it could either be something that the representative files a document that says the 2017 bill and the 2023 bill go together, and that is what would amend our city charter, or the 5-pager is all we have. Either way, it would be in the best interest of the city to ask for clarification, because what we have right now is not enough.
So if, just to be clear, so if it passes this 5-pager, just as it sits, after the bill's passed, goes into law, then the representative could come back and say, well, here's what I meant. Do they have that legal authority to start saying, this board can do whatever, this board's limited to this? Is that how that happens?
That I'm unclear of. I think what would be normal course of business is to have all that fleshed out before the bill becomes law.
Yes.
And whether it be through the committee meetings, there are amendments that may be made to the bill. It's not just the representative that put forth the bill that can edit it. Other representatives can make suggestions to edit the bill. So hopefully we could learn more in the committee meetings, if any are held. So.
Okay, thank you. But it sounds like there will be one committee meeting likely held next Wednesday, is it?
Yes, so at this point, our understanding is that the 19th, and again, I believe it's at 8 a.m., it will be a committee meeting. I think it's State Affairs, I don't know, State
That's
Affairs
correct.
Committee, and this item will be on that agenda.
In Tallahassee.
In Tallahassee, yes.
It's a tough one. I wish we had.
But, I mean, I'd like to hear from other folks if people have ideas about how they'd like to move forward and whatnot, but I also would like to make a motion, barring other ideas or thoughts on this topic. I don't want to cut anybody off, but I also don't want to keep us here scratching our heads too much longer than we need to.
I like your idea of proposing a meeting and giving them a chance to come and tell local people what their intentions are and seeing if they show up. I don't know how we go about that. Who
Sorry, I didn't see.
creates? Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump in there.
Oh, sorry,
No, no,
I
no.
didn't see the lights.
And I didn't. I just want to make sure. So Fletcher, I see your lights on there. You good? Teresa?
Mine's from before.
Oh, okay. Well, I think at this point, if you'd like to make a motion, we would.
Okay, and I appreciate what Fletch said about these other organizations. My only caveat is that we advise the city commission. Like that's what we're here to do, is advise the city commission. So given that, I'd like to make a motion requesting that the city of Gainesville hold a public meeting ASAP on the future of GRU governance, inviting the legislative delegation as well as other local civic organizations and stakeholders and all GRU customers to make brief statements and to solicit public comment on this matter. And if folks are in support of that, I'd be happy to either let the chair or myself write a brief email to the city commission just passing this recommendation on ASAP so that they at least have heard from us on this topic. So that's my motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second on that motion?
I will second that motion with the amendment to the motion that we also, that the city commission requests that the local delegation present the bill they intend to vote on and explain it to the people it's going to affect.
All right.
Okay, did you, was anywhere in the motion saying that it should be held here?
I will explicitly say that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yes, because it might end up being in Tallahassee if we don't say specify the time, place.
No, there's a decent chance they'll say, well, we can't come here during
Their staff could.
the other stuff. Good. All right.
That meeting could be coterminous with the next meeting of the UAB.
Could be.
When is our next meeting, Robin?
The 25th?
12 days.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of time in here. All right. Any other discussion?
So I'll reread because I amended based on what folks said. So a motion requesting that the city of Gainesville hold a local public meeting ASAP on the future of GRU governance, inviting the legislative delegation to present the bill that they plan to vote on, as well as inviting other local civic organizations and stakeholders and all GRU customers to make brief statements and to solicit public comment on this matter.
Okay. Any comments from the public on this motion?
Yes. Yes, if I may. My name's Donald Shepard, for the record. People's representative. I love what you stated. That's exactly what we need to happen before this letter gets written up, because that's a point of direction. And I feel if the public is in on it also, Tony Cunningham can have acknowledge of what the customers are expecting, and he can take and see the intent of the people that have been coming to meetings over years, like myself. I could name a list of them, but it'll take up more of my time. But I think this is an excellent idea. I thank you for that. This is part of direction of leadership. And I thank you for that again. So let's take and talk about that. And if it's so, let's vote on it and make it happen. If we go to Tallahassee, I also think that we should give the public, if they want to go, a chance to pay a percentage of what it costs for the bus to go up there and get an idea of how many people want to go and what's going to cost each individual to take and go there and come back. I've been there through Florida League of Cities, and it was a first experience of me ever going to Tallahassee. So I had to get up there again and again. And the many times I've been up there, every time I've gone, I took it as a first time. But it was a great experience. What needs to be changed up there is they need to take the Democrats off the first and second floor and put them up on the third and fourth floor. Because we, the Republicans, are in charge now. So let's make that change. Let's take and make the change for Gainesville to take and have great leadership under the Republican representation. If these governors are listening, or senators, back me. You asked for my backing, I've given it. I want yours, because I want to be the mayor of this city, and I will bring the change that the people have been asking for. Why should we put this on Tony Cunningham's back or the commissioner's back when the leadership is not doing his job of being a great leader? This is something that I want to take and do with my whole heart. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you. All right, if there's no other discussion, go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So since you did it so eloquently, I'll let you go ahead and send the letter unless you have great desire for me to do it.
If this initiative goes to GRU and GRU then acts on it, who in GRU would be the go-to person for making sure that it actually occurs, sending out the invitations, arranging for the room, having coffee there and all the rest?
So just because, so we're an advisory board to the city commission, so this will go to the city commission. The city commission could then direct GRU to do it at that point.
Okay, so, all right, so to just be clear, this initiative we just voted on goes to the mayor and the city commission.
Yes.
For their activity.
Yes.
And do we have any feedback mechanism to determine how and when that's effectuated?
We can ask. We can advise them to say it's a good thing, but beyond that, no.
Oh, I'm sorry. So this just goes straight to the city commission. They decide to take action. I can provide feedback, or they can provide feedback directly to you on whether they're going to take the action. I will just say this is a short period of time. I'm concerned about the period of time and the number of meetings that the commission already has. They've already expressed that. So I just want to put that out there, that they've expressed there's a lot going on right now, but this goes to them. They decide whether they want to move it forward or not.
Can we designate Barry as our point of contact to facilitate communication here in a very tight framework?
Sure. Deal.
I'm just wondering, does this have to take place at a meeting? Since they're under the Sunshine Law, and so when's the next GR? I know the Gainesville Commission meeting. When is
Right.
the next?
So if the city commission is involved, it has to be a noticed meeting. It doesn't have to
Yes.
be an existing date.
Okay, yes.
It just has to meet the noticing requirements, which I believe is 7 days.
Yes.
So you have to notice it at least 7 days ahead of time, and you can notice a meeting and have it, here.
Okay.
They could choose to do
Okay.
that and have it here or whatever location, as long as it meets the
Okay,
noticing requirements.
7 days.
So timelines are tight. Yeah, because they would basically have to decide
Yeah, okay, I just want to clarify that.
All right. Moving on to public comment. Does anyone from the public want to have any general comments they would like to make at this point? Mr. Shepherd.
My name's Alan Shepherd, People's Representative, and I want to thank you for that input, because I think that was a good appointment, conversation, and that this is something, I just seen a different person take leadership within the board of our advisory board. This is something we need strongly, and that's why I advocate for this gentleman to be brought on the board. Let's push aside this address thing for this gentleman because of his history, if you have read his application, you know the history in which he had. And this would be a second mistake of this city to take and push aside men like this. Nathan Scott wanted to be on this board. He got pushed aside. And then Nathan Scott is very acknowledged about this utility and kilowatts and everything. I mean, there's so many, but let's not make this second mistake and let a person go out of Gainesville, because our businesses are doing that already. Our tenants are going out of Gainesville. So what we're gonna do to take the load off Tony Cunningham's shoulders and make something of what is to the congressmen and to the legislators and to mostly to our people. And this is where we need to move forward, because this weight shouldn't be all on his shoulders. It was put on his shoulders by prior mayors, prior commissioners. And I say this, and my last 58 minutes, is that when you go into a position like this, look at what's been there before you. Look at that information before you choose to be a chair. Or look at that information, or a mayor, look at that information. I looked at it. I've lived here since '97, and I tell you, I've seen a lot of dirty stuff going on in this city commission, and when you say something about it, it don't get heard. It goes in one ear and out the other. So let's not let this go on another year, and it's like, what, 54, 55 years now? The east side hasn't gotten recognition. Let's start getting recognition. I asked the city commission to take and put a decent sidewalk out here on the side of the building so they don't fall off it into the bark. That didn't happen yet. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. All right, member comment. Anyone have any member comments they want to make at this point? Hearing none. Next meeting date, April 25th.
We're planning to have a budget presentation, just some information to prepare you guys for voting for our budget. But that's the only thing we currently have on the agenda, so if there's anything you would like me to add, I can do that.
Does anyone have anything they'd like added to that agenda? Yeah, Fletcher.
But before we end here, I've got a question. I've been trying to follow all the hubbub with this whole GRU management issue, and I've done a lot of reading, read everything that I possibly can, and may not be everything, but everything I can get my hands on. But I kept coming up with a major question over and over and over again. I'd like to see if Tony could help here a little bit. One of the big issues that keeps erupting is the size of the debt that GRU has encumbered. The reported number is always 1.7 billion. What I haven't seen is a comparison of that number with other utilities, either investor-owned utilities or municipal utilities, in terms of dollars per gigawatt, or let's say dollars per gigawatt hour per year, or some measure of comparability. How does that 1.7 billion compare with the bonded indebtedness, say, of FPL or JEA or ORU, or whoever it is, would it be possible for Tony to provide UAB with some sort of comparison scale so we could see that number in its context?
So, Mr. Chair, I can provide tonight, I can provide some information for discussion. We could come back with more detailed information in the future as needed. But one measure is to look at how much debt you have compared to how much assets you have. It's called the debt capitalization. And actually, I left out one part during the state of the utility that's actually a very critical information that I wanted to share from today that has to do with that. But when you look at that ratio or that percentage, we have a very high percentage. So there's different ways to calculate it. The rating agencies each calculate it a different way, but using Fitch's methodology, it's actually 87%, which is kind of the way to think about it is we only have like 13% equity. So we have like a net assets of 1.9 billion, but we owe 1.7 billion. So that is not where you want to be. That is very high. And we have a goal and a target of reaching 70% as that debt to capitalization ratio or percentage. Another way to look at it is that the level of debt that we have comparatively to the size utility we are actually is several times higher, like 3 to 4 times higher than other utilities. So we absolutely have a significant amount more debt than a utility our size. There's several things that led to that over time, but one of the biggest is when the power purchase agreement was signed and then subsequently bought out, that essentially doubled our debt. And so that one transaction doubled the debt, and that really kind of put us in a situation where our annual debt service is over 25% of our revenues go to our annual debt service. And so we do have significantly more debt than other utilities our size. I can bring some more of that information forward in the near future, and we can kind of show that through the budget process. We showed some of that in our previous budget presentation, but we can provide feedback there.
And that's been a very central question in all this follow that we've seen.
So the piece of information, I'm looking at my notes that I didn't share at the State of the Utility, which is really important and related to this, is we did have a meeting earlier today, and the meeting was with our City Commission through the General Policy Committee. And what the City Commission did is the city manager and I have been working together on our general fund transfer amount and what that is. And the state auditor, when we went to JLAC, the reason GRU was there was an audit of the city of Gainesville. The audit had 18 findings. 2 of those findings were specifically related to the utility, and the 2 findings were, one was our debt was significant and we needed to reduce our debt. And the second finding was that we didn't have a methodology or a formula for our general fund transfer, and we needed to have a methodology. So we just had a number, like here's how much we're going to transfer, but there wasn't a methodology in calculating that. And so today, the city manager and I presented to the city commission, and they adopted a methodology. And that methodology for calculating that general fund transfer actually reduces the general fund transfer significantly. And when I say significantly, like more than 50%. So there'd be more than a 50% reduction in what that general fund transfer is, which there's a couple ways to look at that. That is several $1 million. If you look at it for next year, it was scheduled to be $32 million. And with this change in methodology, next year it'll be $15 million. So it's almost a 17.
The letter that Barry drafted, it said 25% of the budget. Is that accurate, or is that going to change significantly with this new number you just mentioned?
So it'll change. So the general government's budget they'll have to reduce expenses because of this reduction in revenue. This is, general fund transfer is essentially a revenue for general government. And so they'll have a reduction in their revenue because of this. What GRU will do with that reduction in expense is apply all of that to debt. And so our plan is to pay down debt more rapidly than we were previously, and trying to reach that 70% capitalization rate by within 10 years. So the goal is to pay extra money. You know, if you think about it as your home mortgage, you're just paying extra money towards your mortgage and trying to pay off your home more rapidly. Similarly, we're going to be paying more debt, more money towards debt more rapidly, and trying to get that capitalization ratio or percentage down to 70% within the next decade. So that discussion really addresses the state auditor's findings. It also addresses JLAC's discussion of a bold plan for and implementing what the general fund transfer formula would be and the reduction in that amount.
Now, do we know what services will be cut with that decrease?
Yeah, so no, we don't know that. So the city manager is preparing a budget now with that reality. And I didn't cover it all, but GRU will be reducing expenses as well, not nearly as much as general government. And the plan is for both GRU and general government to come to the UAB and to go back to the city commission in May with the plans associated with those reductions and what that will mean. And so, yeah, there will be, some impact to, could be some impact to services and to service levels and things of that nature. And we are contemplating that now to bring back in May.
15 million, a reduction of like to 15 million is going to have some impact upon Gainesville. That's employment. That's a hunk of money, and that's employment as well as services. They're going to have to cut, and I don't know where they, it's going to be a problem, I think, for Gainesville per se, if this occurs.
Yes, Mr. Chair, precisely. This is a really, it's a big reduction, and so they are working on what that looks like right now. What GRU is committed to is that reduction is all going to go towards debt. That reduction then will go towards paying debt down more rapidly. We had a plan. The 70% debt capitalization has always been a target, but it was going to take a really long time to meet that target. We are now trying to do that, accelerate that to meeting that in 10 years.
Would it be possible for us to get more details on the specific formula agreement that was talked about?
Yes.
Assuming that that's going to be a sort of a semi-permanent thing moving forward. I mean, assuming that the world remains as it is now. It's not just a 1 year, this year agreement, right? So
correct. It is. So what the direction we got from the commission today was to put together a resolution that codifies that formula and bring that back to the commission. And so, yeah, we can bring that. We can bring it on the 25th of what that agreement, what that formula is and the methodology and what makes that up, and as well as a draft resolution if we have it by that time. I think what we're shooting for is to try to bring. I'm looking at Bianca because she's going to help, but bring it to the May 4th City Commission meeting. So we may be able to have something by the next UAB meeting.
Mr. Chairman, this is a good move. Regardless of what you think about what's going on with all the politics of this, you come back to two major issues here, and all the Standard & Poor and everybody else. The utility for this is going back years, of course. It's in a position where it's high debt, leverage, and it's high rates. Okay, and trying to get after both of those things at the same time is a challenge. I wouldn't think, going down $2 million a year, you're not going to get there.
Right.
Okay, so anytime you get to big projects like this, or significant amounts of money, then you can start talking about, well, how does that move the needle, what do you call it, on my debt or on my rates? And we ought to be, as a advisory group, always asking that question. You know, you bring up the big projects and the big things are going to happen, and what do you call it? Those are the two items that you see in all the Standard & Poor's and the Fitch and everything else. They keep coming back to it. What do you call it? And I've seen in the paper where people say, well, we're not the highest utility on rates. Well, we are. Okay, you go to FMAA and you look at the rates, what do you call it? We are. Okay, so the only way to get around this is to begin to have a real program, which I'm beginning to see, what do you call it, that these are the ways that we can get there, not $1 million at a time. It's got to be more than that. And does anything that we do, how does that move that needle for those two things, rates and debt?
Yep. And I'll add one more thing. We brought, last year, we brought a debt defeasance policy to the UAB into the City Commission. A 70% debt to capitalization ratio was in that policy. That is the target. And again, what we're trying to do with this is accelerate to that target and make sure, I think in the formula for the GFT and in this approach, just to make sure as we are reducing that GFT, that all of those funds go towards debt. Like we don't lose sight of, it's either debt or equity in construction of something else we're doing to maintain our system. And so that is the disciplined path we need to stay on. This is an aggressive change, but we got to stay disciplined on paying down the debt or reducing future debt with those funds, and that's the plan. And when our budget that we're going to be bringing is going to reflect that plan.
Okay, thank you. Go.
So I mean, I want to follow up directly on what the other member just said, because to what extent then can the argument be made to the public that if we take 100% of this money that is not going to be going to GFT and put it towards debt defeasance, that customers are going to see a difference in their utility bills? How and when does that happen? Because at the end of the day, that debt is really big and people are inflamed about that debt. But really the thing that people are inflamed about is when they open that bill every month. And to me, it's just like the whole thing with the gas stations being the big signal for people of where inflation is at. Because it may not actually be that gas prices but that's what you see when you drive down the road. That's what gets everybody fired up. And so I guess, like, how is that going to be part of the conversation? Is what difference are people going to actually see when they open their bill as a result of these efforts?
Yeah, so our main goals, actually, Chair Jacobson sort of summarized those in the letter a little bit. One of the goals is to lower bills. Initially, we're not doing that through lowering rates. Rates are going to be part of, along with this reduced expenses, rates are going to be a part of funding the paying down of the debt. Like, we can't reduce rates and pay down the debt. So initially, reducing rates is not going to be part of that. What we are doing and what we have done starting in April, is be able to reduce the fuel adjustment. So the fuel adjustment has been able to come down, and it actually was reduced by 15 mils on April 1st, which is equivalent on a 1,000 kilowatt hour bill of $15. So it's a pretty significant. So we've talked before about rate increases. A 3% rate increase last year increased your bill by about $2. In April, we were able to reduce bills by 15 mils, which is about $15. We may be able, if natural gas prices stay low, we may be able to do that again later in the summer. So we're trying to really lower the bills through the fuel adjustment and the economic dispatch of our generation units. But in terms of rates and that we are on we have an ordinance that has 3% electric rate increases through 2027. That is part of this plan to pay down the debt. So we're not looking at reducing those rates. It'll be these modest increases that are keeping up with the cost of service and keeping up with CPI and things of that nature. And then again, utilizing any of that additional revenue to pay down the debt. But looking at ways like the fuel adjustment to lower bills, continuing to provide, frankly, again, it's challenging to hear, but it's individually, we have the most control over our bills of how much energy and we use. And so continuing to implement strategies to use less energy, use less water that can lower bills. But from a rate standpoint, there will be no immediate kind of reduction. That kind of does away with your ability to pay down the debt. And then ultimately, longer term, you have the ability, you don't have this debt burden that we currently have. $100 million a year goes to debt service. That is a significant amount, 25% of our revenue. And so it's difficult to do other things when you have that burden. And so if we can reduce that burden, then you start making space for what you're describing.
And just add a couple things. You asked, okay, is this going to be codified? The current commission can't set rules for future commissions. They can always change it, just to be clear on that. And I do agree, we do need to be addressing the debt. Unfortunately, this feels like, I'm going to be very frank here, this JLAC has everyone freaked out. And for those of you who don't know, the big, threat is the governor could come in and remove our elected mayor and city commission under the auspices of JLAC. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that is the threat, and that's why they're reacting, whether they should or not. It's a very sudden change, and so just to give some historical context, the GFT used to cover up to 40% of the budget, and so they have been pulling it down. I'm concerned about the sudden change. Suddenly, we're sitting here in April, between now and October, to say we're going to cut 15 million, without a real plan, a transition. That's a significant change. Whether it should happen or not, it's not happening for good reason. But it's just people trying to ward off the worst possible thing, and whether it makes any difference or not, I have my doubts.
So, Mr. Chair, I will, to put kind of more context around it. So what the city manager and I attempted to do was put together a methodology to get to a general fund transfer. What we used as the basis for that methodology was essentially looking at if you can kind of think of it, if GRU was a private utility coming in, how would the city get revenue from them? And there are two primary ways, and it's property taxes and it's franchise fees. So what we did was we looked at the property that GRU owns and operates, applied the millage rate to that property. We looked at franchise fees, and there's a range of franchise fees. We kind of picked a percentage in the middle, used that franchise fee, calculated what it would be, and that's what we arrived at as the number. So we try to develop a methodology that really mimics a private organization coming in, and so that's how we got to that number. And then, like I said, the challenge now is, okay, so what are the things that need to be done to get there as a city? And one of the things is we do have a lot of vacant positions. And so they're not filling certain roles and reducing the budget is that. There are services that I think are being looked at, but again, it's premature to kind of say exactly what all those are going to be. The city manager, that's what she's focused on right now, and her staff is focused on trying to develop what those approaches are.
And I want to be clear, I'm not questioning the validity of the methodology. It's just to jump in, and I understand the reasons that we're jumping in, but this is not the way under normal times these kind of things would be handled. John, do you want to add something?
Mr. Chairman, this is real planning, okay, because he's given you the logic about how you want to get from here to there.
Right.
Okay, it's more than just presenting an annual budget, okay? The annual budget's a bunch of numbers. Okay, yeah, you can compare it to last year if you want, so what? You're looking at individual pieces, what goes up, what goes down. This is a plan, and a forward look, with thought about how you do move those needles. Okay, and over time, I'm kind of interested to see how you think you want to measure that.
Yep.
You've already given hints about if you do this at 15%, then you can what do you call it, you can move that needle down here, that,
Yep.
you're probably right, you can't do both at the same time.
Right.
What do you call it, the rates and the debt. But you're gonna be doing them individually, what do you call it, with a thought to try to going against both, because you need to do both.
Correct.
Thank you. And I just wanted, just to kind of back up for 1 second, to go back to this. If this passed the way it sits, just to be clear, I don't know if everyone's read it, this new board would come in October 1st. And so just to be clear, I think my understanding is we would all just proceed as usual between now and October 1st.
That is my understanding.
Okay.
Bianca, I don't know if you want to weigh in any different. Okay.
Okay. But just to be clear, so October 1st is probably kind of the when this board would end and the new board would take over in whatever form it's going to look like and all that stuff. But just so people know, just kind of structurally what's going to happen next. It'd be, like I have to say, I volunteered to be on the IRP, but I guess I'll participate. But it's a weird time. So I know I keep saying that. But it is. All right. Anyone else before we conclude this meeting?
We have an agenda for our next meeting?
We have a light agenda, and that's where if we had something in particular we wanted to add to that.
I don't think it's actually that light. So we have a rates and forecasting as the budget update.
Oh, okay.
That there's significant amount of information in there, but if you've been on the board in the past, it's very similar every year. Obviously, it's an update. And then the second item would be we could provide more information on what the formula for the general fund transfer is and how that's made up. And we can provide that presentation and discussion as well.
Okay.
That makes sense?
All right. Thank you. So next meeting, April 25th. With that, we will adjourn.